Hi, welcome to Beyond the Fundamentals. I've been concerned lately about how people have a difficulty being present. They're always chasing the next thing. They're chasing the next deadline. They're in their car. They're in their rush to something else. They're trying to make it to the next graduation, to the next certification, to the next promotion. And what happens when they're doing this is they're not present with themselves. They're not present with what's going on. And as they're aiming and striving for that next thing, that next stop in their car, even could be short-term, long-term goals. As they're striving for that next thing, life is passing by, and they're not being present in the moment for what's passing by. And we get caught up often in, sometimes we're undergoing a struggle, like we're waiting on maybe a certain check to come back from the government, or a certain court case to be over with, or some kind of struggle that we have a deadline where, I can't wait till this is over with. I can't wait till this is decided. I can't wait till that's done. I can't wait till the election's over. And what we wind up doing is we wind up letting our life slip away from us while we focus on this next thing. So people are focused on these abstractions, and they're focused on the future. They're focused on the past. They're focused on something somewhere else. They're not focused on here and now. And ultimately, here and now, there's only this and us. That's all there really is. Everything else is really illusory. So it's important to be here now. And also what I've also noticed, and I think that kind of thing is kind of innocent, really. But there's a little more nefarious thing going on, and not necessarily nefarious from the standpoint of the people, but what I've noticed is that ideology tends to have bad effects in people. Ideology, and it could be any kind of ideology. You could be, a fundamentalist Christian. You could be a woke ideologist, all against the patriarchy, or whatever it is. Doesn't matter what the ideology is. Ideology, fanaticism kind of thing, that serves as an insulator between you and reality, in the same way that somebody who's always striving for the next thing, they are insulated from reality by their mind being somewhere else that is not here and now. Life passes you by. When you're committed to an ideology and you're fervently committed to it, and we just have to do this, and we have to make sure our kids growing up loving the Lord, all this kind of stuff, well, you also lose the capacity to relate to what is right in front of you here and now. And so ideology is, I've noticed that it mimics the consequences of two different things, the activities and the consequences of two different things. And one of those is addiction. If you're a fervent fundamentalist Christian, it's very similar to the effects that addiction can have on you. Compulsive behavior that harms the things that we care about. We wind up doing things for these abstract ideas because it meets some written down dogmatic ethical standard somewhere, but we're not actually looking at the situation and developing wisdom on what works for what we're trying to do, because we're trying to please something that we can never really know if it's pleased or not. Okay, and so it mimics addiction, and it also mimics personality disorders. Now, we've got other videos on this, so I'm not going to get into this right here in this video, but it mimics these things. And what I've noticed is that due to either our burnout lifestyle right now, everybody's got to work harder, smarter, faster, and get more done and meet all the deadlines and be here and be there. We're not here and now. And ideology does the same thing to the mind. It insulates you from the here and the now. And life is here and now. And one of the things about waking up that's very helpful is to learn that you're just right here. That's it. You're right here. There you are. Be in the now. Be right here. Be now. And oddly enough, this has got me thinking about the concept of 1 Timothy 6:10 says, "The love of money is the root of all evil." And I've been thinking a lot about abstractions, and I made comparisons before about how money is an abstraction and how propositional knowing is an abstraction. And so I want to delve into this, and I want to develop a thought with you that I think is really going to change how you can see 1 Timothy 6:10, and also give you a set of ideas that can really help orient you moving forward if your goal is to be aimed at growth and transformation and becoming the most real version of yourself. So the Greek word polyargyria, phila argyria, and I don't pretend to be any kind of expert in Greek, but the love of money, philiargyria, phileo, you might notice that the love of, and argyria, it gets translated as money, but it literally means silver. You might remember, 7th grade science class, and you had to memorize the periodic table. The Latin word for silver is argentum or argentum. And so argyria is, so philargyria, the love of money, or literally the love of silver is what this word means. And so what I want to do is I don't think that this is really about greed. Now I understand the conventional thinking, and it's not exactly wrong, where when something is awry, follow the money, right? And I get that, and that's not exactly wrong, but I think there's a lot more to this, and I want to help delve into this. So I want to make a meta move on this with regard to abstraction. Philargyria, the love of money. Money is an abstraction, okay? I can drive a car. I can drive a car. I can buy a car with money. I have notes in front of me here. They're apparently not very good notes, but if you see me looking off to the side, I'm just looking at my notes here. I can buy a car with money, but I cannot drive the money that would buy a car. I can buy a house with money, but I cannot live in the money that would buy a house. Money is the abstraction of things for which we can exchange it. Okay? It represents potential, perhaps. But the real wealth is in the stuff. We go to the grocery store and we feel like we're losing money when we're really getting the things that money can buy that you need to eat. And the real wealth is in your shopping cart. It's not in your bank account. Now, there is an opportunity cost where you can't spend that on something else now. It is a collapsed wave function, if you will. But it's still an abstraction. Abstractions move us away from our lived experience and physical reality. And I want to make the comparison like I commonly do in the 4 kinds of knowing, which is participatory is the deepest kind, perspectival, then procedural, and then propositional knowledge. Propositional is the most shallow kind of knowing. Participatory knowing is the deepest kind of knowing. Propositional knowledge is like the currency of the 4 kinds of knowing. It's like the money of the 4 kinds of knowing. It is verbal and written abstractions of the other kinds of knowing. And it in itself is not really a kind of knowing in and of itself. It's symbols, it's pointers toward things that can be known. And it's a way to communicate that which is known as long as the person you're communicating with has some kind of experience in those things that are in the domains of the other 3 kinds of knowing, participatory, perspectival, and procedural. So words are also abstractions. I can swim in a pool, but I cannot swim in the letters P-O-O-L, nor can I swim in the sounds that those letters make when I employ them in the word pool. In the 4 kinds of knowing, that would be propositional knowing. So the love of propositional normativity is the love of abstraction over concrete presence and experience. So I postulate, this is me thinking out loud, I postulate that the love of money in 1 Timothy 6:10 is really Paul's more accessible way of saying the love of abstraction. The love of abstraction is the root of all evil. In other words, there's going to be evil that happens in lots of domains, and it doesn't necessarily trace back to a dollar bill somewhere, or a coin of silver, or a credit, or whatever you want to call it, a quid, a pound. It's going to trace back to an abstraction. Now, I want to be very clear. I'm not saying that abstractions are wrong. just like money isn't wrong. It is the love of, or the prioritization of, that over the real. That's where the problem is. Having things out of order, in the wrong order of hierarchy. So I postulate that the love of money in 1 Timothy 6:10 is really Paul's more accessible way of saying the love of abstraction. So when we take it to the meta, take it up one step from the love of money to the love of abstraction, it can come back down in another domain of abstractions like words, propositional normativity. And it would have the same effect of serving as the root of evil that would inevitably be consequential to that orientation. The love of words arranged in certain ways, like in, say, 9 marks or governmental legal frameworks, it's a reductionistic left hemisphere desire for control. Laws, rules, statutes, dogmas, creeds, confessions, etc., they always come from those who overestimate their ability to pre-specify relevance indefinitely. The recognition of this fact is why the founders of, say, the United States, for example, we are still allowed to make laws and we can amend the Constitution to actually change it, because we recognize that we cannot pre-specify relevance, and sometimes things need to be changed because things come up that we did not foresee at the time of the writing of the thing, whether it's a creed or a confession or a law or a statute. Reality is messy. It's wiggly. It's gooey. So being present in reality is challenging. Abstractions can anesthetize us from reality like drugs, making us unfit for our true environment, especially over time, and especially in societies over generations. So what I want to do is double click on this. I think this is an insightful framing, and it connects deep philosophical, theological, and cognitive territory in a way that critiques not just money, but the epistemic orientation that prefers abstraction over presence, control over relationship, and propositional structure over participatory engagement. So we're going to look at this in a structured and layered way as we move forward. So the core thesis here could be something like the biblical warning against the love of money, philarguria, is at a deeper level a warning against the love of abstraction itself. Money is a medium of abstraction, one that allows us to substitute symbol for substance. This meta pattern of abstraction, when elevated to a guiding value, becomes the root orientation of evil across domains: theology, governance, economics, and culture. Making the move from money to abstraction. Money is not wealth. Money is a symbol of potential access to wealth. You cannot eat, wear, or shelter in money. It refers beyond itself, just like words do, just like symbols do, but has no utility apart from what it can be exchanged for. This is the essence of abstraction, a displacement from the concrete to the conceptual. Just as a map is not the territory, money is not the meal, nor the shelter, nor the love. Philarguria, the love of money, then, is not just greed. It is the love of symbol over substance. So when I say I can buy a house with money, but I cannot live in the money, this becomes a meta move. An abstraction elevates reference over reality, and once you love the abstraction that's been elevated over reality, it replaces the experience of the world with a simulacrum, a fake version of it. Truman Show. Abstraction and the 4 kinds of knowing. So if we borrow from John Vervaeke's framework, propositional knowing is knowing that something is the case. Procedural knowing is knowing how to do something. Perspectival knowing is being in a situation. Participatory knowing, being a self in relation to the world. And that's, people say, what's the difference between participatory and perspectival knowing? Perspectival knowing gives you episodic memory episodic experience, really, from a certain point of view. Participatory knowing is having an attunement of the relationality of you and all the other entities, whether inanimate or not, that are also in the arena. that you're in. So it's a relational awareness and knowing. So money operates at the propositional procedural domain. It is the symbolic compression of value. Notice how we say many times before that propositional knowing is a compression of other kinds of knowing. Money is a symbolic compression of value, abstracted from context and relationship. To love it is to prefer symbolic control over embodied interaction. That's why you have things like 9 marks. Symbolic control is more important than embodied interaction in relationships. The love of propositional normativity. In other words, I have all my propositions all ironed out. Here's all my dogma. Here's my woke ideology. Here's the things that I believe. The love of propositional normativity is the love of abstraction over concrete presence and experience. So this maps philarguria to a deeper epistemic idolatry, the love of money to a deeper epistemic idolatry. Not just loving money, but loving the abstractions that displace participatory knowing. Okay? So that's the epistemic idolatry. It's not just loving money, but loving the abstractions that displace participatory knowing. Then we have a left hemisphere problem. Enter Ian McGilchrist's hemispheric theory. The left hemisphere prefers certainty, categorization, symbolic manipulation. It seeks control through abstractions and representations. The right hemisphere engages in embodied present moment awareness, respects complexity, ambiguity, and nuance. The love of money is the left hemisphere's desire to control relevance indefinitely via symbol. I'm going to say that again. The love of money is the left hemisphere, or the love of abstraction, is the left hemisphere's desire to control relevance indefinitely via symbol. So if you were to reword 1 Timothy 6:10, it would be something like the left hemisphere's desire to control relevance indefinitely via symbol is the root of all evil. Something like that, if we were to do a functional reframing. So you could apply this to things like 9 marks, Calvinism, provisionism, Mormonism, Jehovah's Witnesses. They're all the same, doesn't matter. And other systems, they're all attempts to engineer spirituality. They love words arranged in certain ways more than presence of the divine. Now, they won't say that. They will say they love the presence of the divine, but that's only because the words that they follow tell them they have to say that. They're in a double bind. They replace transformation with prescription. Notice that people following those things, none of them transform, none of them spiritually mature. R.C. Sproul went to his deathbed as a child. Okay? So they replace transformation with prescription. This is philarguria, the love of money, in another domain. The love of theological abstraction over spiritual encounter. So abstraction, the next phase we're in here, is abstraction can be an anesthetic. Deaden your feelings or your awareness of reality. Abstractions shield us from the discomfort of reality. Laws replace justice. Think of Nazi Germany. I mean, killing a Jew was legal. Think of when slavery was legal. We had laws. You could follow the law and be legal, but is it just to enslave a person? Killing a baby. It could be legal, but is it justice? So laws replace justice. Money replaces provision. Dogma replaces God, and policy replaces love. Abstractions anesthetize us from reality the same way drugs do, just like drugs. And like any drug, long-term dependence leads to loss of responsiveness, misattunement to the real environment, inability to discern salience, what matters. I know people who are fundamentalist Christians as they're getting up in years now. And it's the same way as a drunk. Their loss of responsiveness, they can't respond to the reality. When you're going through some kind of difficult thing, the only thing they can say is, well, I'm going to pray for you. Why? Because they've been addicted to an ideology for so long that's been shielding them from reality that they have no practical way to help you, because they have no participatory attunement in the arena that they can offer. They have no wisdom to offer, no sagacity to offer. They have the intentionality of love, but they don't have the capacity of love. All they can do is send thoughts and prayers. And I'm not saying that there's nothing to prayers, but our older people, if we were actually in a wisdom tradition, our older people would have wisdom that would be practically helpful, not just these wishful sayings they can toss our way because they are completely incompetent to do anything to help the struggles that we face. Across generations. So to reiterate that again, like any drug, long-term dependence on these abstractions, like fundamentalism. You get a loss of responsiveness. They can no longer interact in reality. Just like a drunk person, there's a misattunement to the real environment. They're relating to proxies, ideological proxies, like a child relating to the Easter Bunny and Santa Claus, and people are doing it when they're 75 years old. Inability to discern salience. What should stand out to me, and then more than that, what should be relevant to me based on what's happening, what matters. Across generations, this becomes cultural pathology. Institutions built on abstractions about love forget how to love. Governments built on abstractions about justice commit injustice in the name of law and order. Churches built on abstractions about God exclude the presence of God when it actually shows up. Reality is messy. It's wiggly and gooey. Being present is fragile and difficult. It's actually hard to be present if I'm sitting there looking my wife right in the face. It's difficult to have a real conversation for many people. And it's a lot easier to refer to the abstraction of what is the social norm for what a wife should be or what a husband should be. What's the social norm for what your gender roles should be? What's the social norm for what does the Bible say the wife should be doing or the husband should be doing? It's easy to do anything but relate to that individual. That takes a little bit. So it's easier. It's easier for people to, it's almost like that person isn't there, and they have all these overlays that come from society and tradition and what they think their holy books are. And as long as you fit the overlays, you can hold that spot. But ask me to relate to you as a person, it's too tough. It's too hard. Can't do that. But I will say this, that if you do try to do that and succeed, it's a wonderful thing. It's an absolutely wonderful thing to actually relate to a person rather than to a set of ideas wearing a person's face is a wonderful, beautiful thing. And it's worth it. It's worth it. And it will get harder before it gets easier if you start to go down that road. So reality is messy. Being present is fragile and difficult. Reality doesn't have any clean edges. Okay? Rivers wind around. There's mud, there's sand, there's dirt. The mountain ranges are all wiggly. And there's this place in Isaiah, the crooked places shall be made straight, and the mountains will be brought low, and all this kind of stuff. That's this left hemispheric kind of, I'm going to put everything in order, I'm going to control everything. Abstractions feel safer. They flatten, they simplify, they sterilize. Okay, so it's a lot easier, rather than dealing with reality and having relationships with people that are complicated and complex, it's easier just to have a little confession of faith or systematic theology or slogans against the patriarchy or just whatever it is. They flatten things, they simplify, and they sterilize. But life isn't safe. It is wild. Living, it's sacred, and it's relational. And to be fit for it, we must abandon false certainty. Stop worshiping maps over the terrain and step back into the unknown with humility. So considering 1 Timothy 6:10, for the love of money is the root of all evil, you could reread that. For the love of abstraction is the root of all evil in any domain. So this brings clarity. Abstraction about goodness replaces the practice of goodness. Abstraction about God replaces the presence of God. Abstraction about self replaces the embodied self. So philargyria equals an idolatry of the disembodied map, or a map that doesn't necessarily match the terrain, or will not be updated for when it doesn't match the terrain. That's what that is. The love of money, philargyria, is loving unupdatable maps over and above the terrain itself. Consequences of abstraction worship or abstract worship. What you have as consequences, you have ethical collapse, doing evil in the name of good. You have spiritual stagnation, substituting doctrine for transformation. And you notice this with all the 9 marks people who are just absolute children. Social fragmentation. Words replace empathy. Debate replaces dialogue. You have political tyranny. Law without wisdom becomes oppression. Cultural hollowness, simulacra, replace the sacred. So the way forward from abstraction to embodied wisdom, the antidote to philargyria, isn't asceticism or poverty, but it's reconnection with the present moment, perspectival knowing. Be here, be now, be in this present moment. You should practice just sitting there and just absorbing in and taking in the present moment. And then branch out and do something wild, like feel the grass between your toes. Something like that. Feel the sun on your skin. Feel the breeze on your skin. Sit outside and listen to the birds chirp. Just sit there. Be in the present moment. When you're with a person that you love, your child, your sibling, your spouse, your parent, friend, be with them attentively. Be in the moment with them. Don't be looking at your phone or worried about something else or having your mind elsewhere. Pay attention. It's a privilege to be in the presence of another being who was also created in the image of God. Witness that. So the antidote is, number 1, to be in this present moment. And then the next one is relational being. Relate. Be relational being. As you doing, being, and becoming. Do so relationally. Participatory knowing. Embodied practices. Procedural knowing. You might want to say meditate. Follow Caroline Leaf's book on cleaning up your mental mess. Play a sport. Do some Tai Chi. Do some stretches or some yoga. Do some group exercises or group activities. Ride your bikes with a group of people or yourself or somebody else. Do some kind of embodied practice and see every motion that you do as a sacred experience of this moment of life that you're in at the moment. And only then, meaningful propositions. So notice we have a hierarchy here, where we have the present moment, relational being, embodied practices, and then meaningful propositions. So I have to reiterate all the time, we're not against propositions. We're against them being at the top of the hierarchy. Okay? They should be at the bottom of the hierarchy. Very, very important, but at the bottom of the hierarchy of our epistemic orientation to the world around us. So this reverses the epistemic hierarchy and puts it back in order where it should be. We are not salvaged or delivered by propositional assent, but by transformative participation. The Word became flesh, not footnote. Okay? So, to close this and wrap this up, to love money is to love the shadow of the thing instead of the thing itself. It's like preferring the word swim to the sensation of swimming, or admiring the menu while starving to death at the table. To love abstraction is to abandon the river in favor of a plumbing diagram, and then to worship the pipes. Something like this. So 1 Timothy 6:10, the love of money is the root of all evil. If you make the meta move, it is the love of abstraction, and we can very easily carry that over into the areas of our life where propositional normativity removes us. It fills our head with all kinds of ideas that aren't in our present nowness, and we become preoccupied with them, and we think about them. Jesus said, think not about, tomorrow, and you can't add a cubit to your height, and the things shall take care of themselves. He's not talking about not planning or anything like that, but stop worrying about all this stuff that isn't here and now, okay? Make a list or whatever you got to do, and then do what you have to do so that your mind can be here and now and be there. Hope this has been helpful. If you like this, like the channel, support the channel. You can go to beyondthefundamentals.com and donate. Appreciate those who do. And thanks for watching. May the Lord bless you, and good day.